Hello everybody, in this video we are going to continue the conversation about how to use the elimination method to solve a system of equations. So in the previous video we talked about how to create the zero, some of the things that we're allowed to do to manipulate equations to create the zeros. So let's talk about special solutions. So when we're talking about a system of equations, when we talk about special solutions, we're talking about solutions that are not an ordered pair. So the most common kind of problem you're going to get is where you can find the x and the y in no particular order and find the ordered pair that goes with that system. But sometimes we have equations that don't intersect each other. We have systems that are the same line. And so what happens when we're doing substitution elimination method and those kinds of solutions come up? What does that look like when we're doing this method? So with that being said, let's go ahead and look at a couple of these because these are going to be special. So for this one, I'm going to remind you of a couple things. Number one, we're looking at the x's and the y's to see if we can manipulate them to create zeros. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at these x's. We have 18 and -9. And they're not the same, so they won't eliminate right now. Okay. Notice that we have our y's also not the same, not right now, but we can take a 4 and turn it into 8, just like we can take a 9 and turn it into 18. So both of these are already positives and negatives, so all we have to do is pick a variable, multiply, and combine. So with that being said, I like the smaller numbers better, so I'm going to try to eliminate my y's. So in order to get this 4 to become a positive 8, so it can then become a 0, let's multiply this entire equation by 2. And remember that when we're multiplying an equation, you have to multiply all the numbers. This one, and that one. Don't forget about the constant. It also needs to be multiplied. So I'm going to go ahead and say -2 times -9 is negative 18x. 2 times 4 gives us 8 equals 2 times 5 gives us 10. Now, I like my equations to be stacked, one on top of the other, so I'm going to take this one. I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to put it underneath. And you're going to notice something. As you're writing it down, you should notice something. Our intention was to get rid of the y's by creating the 0. But you should also notice that your x's are going to cancel out as well because you have 18's, one's positive, one's negative. So when this happens, just work it out. We know this is 0. We know this is 0 equals, and now this is 0. 0 plus 0 is 0. And we know that 0 is equal to 0. These are the same number. So when we don't have an x, when we don't have a y, the only thing we're left to say is if what's left over is true or false. 0 is equal to 0, so this is a true statement. So because this is true, we're going to say infinitely many solutions. And if you were to graph this on a coordinate plane, you would find out that this line is the same thing as this line, and they would be one on top of the other. So your graph would only look like one line because they would be the same. Okay? So if you have your x's and your y's both eliminate, then just ask yourself if what's left over is true, so you can write many solutions. So let's look at the other special solution. So the other special solution is when it's not true. So let's look at this one right here. Notice that your 20 and your 10 are not the same, but they do have opposite signs. 18 and 9 are not the same, also opposite signs. So it really doesn't matter which one we choose. We can easily take this 10 and turn it into a 20 by multiplying by 2. Now, for some reason, 2 is very popular, but remember, you can multiply an equation by any number. It just happens that these examples require us to multiply by 2. So remember, we're multiplying 10, 9, and 13. So this is going to be negative 20x positive 18y is equal to 26. All right, so this one is the same one, so we need to take that top one. Notice I'm not going to change it. I'm just going to write it so we can combine it. Now, once it's stacked, you're going to see the positive and negative 20. This is going to eliminate. You're going to see the positive and the negative 18. These are going to eliminate. So we have zeros on the left side. So this is 0 plus 0 is equal to, this is not 0. Oh, positive 10. So we have 0 is equal to 10. And we know that 0 can only be 0 equal to 0. So this is not true. This is a false statement. And because it's false, we cannot say many solutions or infinitely many solutions. This one are two parallel lines. And because two parallel lines don't intersect, we say they have no solution because they don't have anything in common. And that's our final answer. So when your x's and your y's completely disappear, look at what's left over so you can determine if it's true or false. And then from there, write many or no solutions. Please know the difference between the two. All right, we have one more example we need to look at, and it is our real world example. All right, so this one, we're going to read the word problem. We are going to write the system of equations. We're going to use elimination to determine the solution, but then at the end, I need you to also interpret the solution in context to the problem. So let's see how much we can get done. So if you look at the screen, you can look at the problem and notice that we're talking about mixing 100 pounds of coffee, and we're going to sell it for $25 per pound. She is using two types of coffee for this mixture. We have one set of coffee that's going to sell for $51 per pound, and then we have Colombian coffee that sells for $11 per pound. How many pounds of each type of coffee should Sylvia use? First things first, we're talking about two different things. We need to go ahead and identify our x and our y. Since they're not telling us what we're going to use, we're going to determine what x and y is. Now, when you read this question, you're going to realize we're talking about two different kinds of coffee. So those are going to be our x and our y. So if it's okay with you, let's call Kona coffee our x. And this is Kona coffee. Okay. And specifically, we're talking about how many pounds of Kona coffee, but let's just leave it as Kona coffee. All right, same thing. Our second coffee is Colombian, so we're going to say Colombian coffee. And we're talking about how many pounds of Colombian coffee we're going to use. Now, when you set up your equation, you want to keep all your units together if you can. So the first thing we know is that she's going to mix 100 pounds. We don't know how many of each she's going to use, but we know that the number of pounds of Kona coffee need to add up with the Colombian coffee, and they should be both equal to 100 pounds, because it says we're going to make 100 pounds, but I don't know how much of each. But we know that they need to add up to 100. So that's your first equation. This is beautiful because this kind of equation right here, you can use it for substitution. You can also use it for elimination because they have ones, and ones is easy to manipulate. All right, the other thing that we know about Kona coffee, that it's going to sell for $51, and then the Colombian coffee is $11. So we're going to put all our money in the same equation. And then we know that when we sell our coffee, it's going to be $25 per pound. So let's just do that. So we're going to say 51x plus 11y is equal to 25. Now here's the thing. If you're going to use the elimination method, remember what we need. We need the same number with the opposite sign. So these already have automatic ones. You need to make a decision. Do we want to multiply this entire equation by negative 51 so the x's can cancel out? Or do we want to multiply it by negative 11 so the y's can cancel out? That's the good thing about elimination, is you have choice. Now, I'm going to choose to do the 11. We're going to eliminate the y's because it's a smaller number, and sometimes when we use bigger numbers, it can get out of hand. So let's multiply the first equation by negative 11. Like that. Okay. All right, so I'm going to do my work over here since we already set up the equation. We're going to say negative 11x negative 11y is equal to negative 1,100. So if you take negative 11 and multiply it by 100, you're going to get negative 1,100. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take this 51x. Notice I'm not changing the second equation. And so by doing this, we know these are going to cancel out. This is going to become 0 because they're going to positive and negative 11. All right, so from here, let's go ahead and solve the rest of it. This one right here is going to give us a positive 40x is equal to negative 1,100 plus 25 is going to give us this negative 1,075. All right, as I'm looking at our problem here, I know there's some red flags coming up. So I know that if I divide by 40, it might go in evenly, but we're not supposed to have negative pounds of coffee. So I went back and I'm reading here that it says Sylvia wants to mix 100 pounds, and each pound she's going to sell for $25. So we actually need to multiply these two numbers and set it right here. So if you multiply 25 times 100, you're going to get 2,500. So let's go ahead and add those zeros there. And so that means I'm going to add these zeros here. So we actually have to go back and change this number right here, because now we're going to take a negative 1,100 and we're going to add 2,500 to it. So let's do that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and show you my screen here so you can see me actually do this. So we're going to say negative 1,100 plus, that's a positive 2,500, and we're going to get 1,400 for this one. And notice that this one is positive. So I'm going to scratch this out and I'm going to say 1,400. Now from here, I am going to divide by 40. So we get x is equal to, and notice it goes in 35 times. So in order for this to work, we know that we have to get 35 pounds of Kona coffee. And so if we're going to do 35 pounds of Kona coffee, then remember the rest of it needs to add up to 100. So we're going to take this equation, the original one, and we're going to say 35 for x plus y is equal to 100. So if I subtract 35 from both sides, we get 65. And so our answer, I'm going to put it over here, is 35, 65. But please remember, you have to write it in context to this question. So it's 35 pounds of Kona coffee and 65 pounds of Colombian coffee. All right, I'm going to stop right here. I hope you feel a little bit better about these problems, and I'll see you guys in the next videos.